Thank you very much. Oh, you can all hear me, that's working. Is it too microphony? No? Good, okay. I would like to thank Professor Rimmer for the invitation to present this afternoon. It's wonderful to be on a lineup of some incredible speakers, and it's been a really terrific day of ideas sharing. I've learned a lot. I really recognise that we're at Friday afternoon and it's 4:30, so I'll try and bring the energy for the last 20 minutes, but we'll just see how we go. As other speakers have done, I also want to pay my deepest respects to the First Peoples of this country, the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, for their ongoing custodianship, care of country, and to follow what was just an incredible presentation, and yeah, all of the words and the voices and the sentiment that has gone to the absolute need to centre First Nations wisdom and expertise in this great transitional moment that we have before us. I just really want to echo the importance of that. In terms of my own place, this is a photo that I took when I was, this time last year, finishing the doctorate. So anybody who's done a PhD knows that the last bit's the worst part, and there's lots of writing and you just need to kind of push your way through it. So the Christmas gum was in flower. So it's, yeah, I was very much grounded in place, I can tell you that, for the last part. And just a little bit about, I guess, who I am. I come to academia with a background in law, community lawyering, more than any other type of law, although I have worked in the private legal profession as well. I worked for many years in access to justice, working with people who cannot afford private legal assistance, and even if they were able to do that, don't have the same sorts of legal problems that the private legal profession tends to assist with. So I worked a lot in homelessness, in mental health, disability, tenancy and housing, those service systems that are really there to support people who for structural reasons do not have the financial or other capacity and have sort of very pointy interfaces with the legal system. So access to justice has always been an abiding passion for me, and it was really after the bushfires that passion really it became very stark to me that the climate crisis was the next layer and lens through which we needed to see injustice for the people and communities that are served by the public legal service system, the access to justice sector. So I made some changes in my own life to try and work out how to do that. One of them, of course, was doing a PhD, changed a job, and joined some boards. So for 4 years, I've just stepped down, but I've been involved in governance of a great organisation based in Melbourne, Psychology for a Safe Climate, and I'm also one of the directors of a new organisation, Lawyers for Climate Justice Australia. I've also worked worked with and for peak bodies that deliver community legal services here in Queensland, and also in Victoria as well, and particularly in the last couple of years trying to work out what is our sector's role in relation to climate change. I'm going to speak to you a little bit about this service system that I'm mentioning, and then talk about my doctoral study, which was really thinking about, okay, we have this big service system, this safety net for legal assistance in Australia. It is an imperfect beast. It is a mixed model. There are lots of different service providers working, beavering away every day to provide individual legal assistance to people, but also doing community legal education and law reform work. The way in which this big service system came into being 50 years ago was really in the 70s a decision to provide public resources to deliver this safety net, but that was always a focus on the eradication of poverty and a recognition that the law and legal system can both be a barrier to justice for people, but it can also enable just outcomes for people as well. There have been lots of inquiries in Australia in relation to access to justice and how this service system is succeeding or not in being able to deliver justice for people. As part of my PhD, I looked at all of the inquiries that have happened since that seminal report in the mid-70s, and none of them, probably not surprising, have ever really contended with the phenomenon of climate change and disasters. So we have this system that is there directed to eradicate poverty that hasn't really contemplated the frame that we are now living in, this daily reality of a changing climate, and with that, extreme weather events and the phenomenon of disasters really bringing big disruptive impacts for people's livelihoods. We know that climate change is a poverty-making machine. We know that there are winners and losers in disasters as well. And we know that climate adaptation itself presents huge dilemmas of justice. It is not a technocratic process. There are really big issues and trade-offs at stake. So all of this, for me, really presented a question that I couldn't walk away from, which was, well, what is the role of the sector? Is the access to justice sector prepared for climate change impacts, and what do we need to do to ensure that it is? When you ask that question, it's really obvious to think about other public service systems. And so I have looked by way of comparison at our public health system. There has been a lot of work done in the literature and through programmatic design to prepare our public health system for climate change impacts. And the burden of disease and the impact of climate change on people's health is really obvious. It's perhaps not so obvious in terms of people's justice needs. But needless to say, the public health system has done the work, and that is really, I think, an invitation for the legal assistance sector to also prepare itself. I'm talking without many pretty images this afternoon, but this is what the Australian legal assistance sector sort of looks like. We have really large institutions in the legal aid commissions. So you can see it's a smorgasbord of organisations of various sizes, various sort of workflows as well. Legal aid commissions are the big statutory agencies that exist in every state and territory around the country. They have a priority on helping people who get into trouble with the criminal justice system. They also do a lot of family law work and civil law work as well. There is a very, very strict eligibility criteria. If you need help from legal aid, you will only receive a grant of aid if you have absolutely no assets, you are dirt poor. A very, very, very small amount of people in Australia are actually eligible. Those living in poverty often do not receive that grant of aid. Then we have community legal centres, which are small, diverse. They do range in size. All around the country, there are about 200 community legal centres in Australia. They are embedded within their communities. Non-profit organisations. Those communities can be place-based communities in the regions, or they can be communities of interest, for example, helping a particular cohort of the community like the Prisoners Legal Service, or working with young people, or working with women, or working with migrants, for example. We have dedicated Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander legal services that are funded specifically to assist our First Nation, our First Peoples, and they again have culturally tailored service delivery and exist right around the country. And increasingly, our private legal profession in Australia is also involved in a very systematic way in delivering public legal assistance as well through pro bono work. So they give their time and their expertise for no financial cost, and that's often coordinated through community legal centres or other agencies to be able to give their time. The other thing that is a reality for this service system is that the work that's done by the legal aid commissions is not exclusively done by lawyers hired or employed by legal aid commissions. Increasingly, the private legal profession, about 70% of work done by legal aid is actually delivered by private lawyers working in small private firms, really to supplement the work of legal aid. So that is the imperfect mixed model service system where Australia's legal safety net really exists. So when I was wanting to explore the preparedness of this service system to climate change impacts, and I think it's a relevant inquiry to share with you afternoon when we're thinking about transitioning into a renewable clean energy future, being an adaptive service system, I chose the theoretical framework of the capabilities approach, which may be familiar to some of you in the room or online listening. But Amartya Sen, Martha Nussbaum, big scholars of the capability approach, really conceptualised by Amartya Sen, really demonstrates that, or asks the question about what is needed for people to live a flourishing life. How can people have a life of their choosing, and what do we need from a systems perspective to put in place to enable that flourishing to come to pass? The role of public institutions in giving effect to people's capabilities is absolutely vital. And so the role of this service system, the legal assistance sector, in a just transition and a climate change world, I think is really quite profound. Our opportunities and our prospects depend crucially on what institutions exist and how they function. And so that is the framework that I use to guide my particular inquiry. What I did was I thought, well, I'm sort of more, I fall into the qualitative research school, so I'm going to interview Australian lawyers who work in access to justice around the country, and I'm going to run a survey and ask them, both in interviews and through the survey, how they perceive climate change affecting the work that they're doing, their well-being in the workplace, but also the legal problems that are coming before them through their clients' problems, and how prepared they think the sector is to being able to adapt to a climate-changed future. Unsurprisingly, well, I mean, there was a real richness in the data that was collected, and I'll go into some of the findings in a minute. But in terms of the organisational resilience that is required for organisations to withstand the impacts of climate change, there's a really salient example that I can give from the Northern Rivers from the big 2022 floods. So the flooding in Lismore that ripped through, Lismore is sort of the capital of the Northern Rivers, completely took out the community legal centre that is based on the high street there. So Northern Rivers Community Legal Centre services that geographic population. The 14-metre flood completely took out both their downstairs and upstairs office. So all of their files were completely destroyed. But in addition to the sort of the physical destruction of property and infrastructure, all the workforce of the Northern Rivers Community Legal Centre, the staff were personally impacted by that event as well. So their own housing, their own social circumstances were really terribly impacted as well. So that has a kick-on effect to being able to do the work of serving your community in times of disaster. The bullet points up here are the indicators of organisational resilience that I used, against which I measured the findings of what people were telling me through the data. And it looks a little bit like this when you use the Smart Art option when you're building a PowerPoint, but I can actually say that the resourcing component of these indicators of organisational resilience really underpinned everything else in the findings. So as a sector that is already overburdened with work and the demand for a need for their services outweighs the capacity to deliver the work, when the layer of climate change and extreme weather events is added to that, there needs to be far more resourcing to be able to surge capacity in times of need. So in closing, I'll just share a couple of anecdotes from my survey findings and my interviews. So to the theme of working in an anticipatory way, rather than being stuck in this reactive modality where we're just sort of responding to the issues that are coming through our door, this is what some of the lawyers expressed. We can't simply keep chucking the legal band-aid on the sore each time a disaster happens. And that is currently the way in which the service system is set up to respond. Lawyers also said, our communities want us to be driving the change from the front. They want us to be anticipating what is coming. They want us to be writing law reform submissions, doing the work to help us adapt to the climate change future and to address those really profound justice concerns. That's going to be the best way for us to reduce the legal problems that people face. And this is one of my favourite quotes. This comes from a lawyer who's worked for decades in a major legal aid commission. And they said, look, if we start to work in an anticipatory way, we are going to develop more resilience for ourselves. We'll build better systems. We will feel engaged. That's going to give us some hope, and that will offset some of the existential anxiety that we might be feeling and enable us to respond more effectively to the disasters and emergencies that happen. So that is what climate adaptive practice is to that particular lawyer. That's going to obviously help the service system work more effectively, but also help people cope better psychologically, in their words. So I have some recommendations. Really, I think leadership is crucial. That sustainable investment is also really evident. We need to ensure that funding cycles don't have a feast and famine approach, that we have sustainable investment in our workforce and the program offerings, that we will then be able to do more law reform, more community education, and more importantly, interfacing with other agencies that are involved, both in the transition, but also in disaster management as well. This is a wonderful cartoon that summarises the work of the community legal sector. They have a tradition and a history of agitating for change. So just add a little bit of the ingredients of community legal centres to the issue and we will be able to affect change. I would say that's kind of a bit of an invocation and a provocation. It can't happen without sort of sustainable resourcing. Thank you so much for listening. I've got some links to further work and the write-up of my findings, but I'm not sure if these slides are going to be shared or not, so I just put that there as an offering. Thank you.